Every year, hundreds of thousands of inmates are released from prison. The reality is the majority will be rearrested. The challenges faced when coming home are immense, from finding affordable, safe housing to navigating a difficult job market. But given the right resources, and more importantly, given the will, rehabilitation and success is possible. Tonight, we want you to meet Lorenzo Brooks. He spent 30 years in prison, convicted of second-degree murder. He recently returned home.
I went to jail for taking somebody's life, and that was a travesty. And because of the fact that I took something away from society, now I got to give that back. The memory that sticks with me is the loneliness. Sure, you in there with sometimes up to 1,000 other guys, you know. At certain times, I felt out of my element, you know, because you got a certain attitude that's pervasive in there, you know. And if you don't have that same attitude, you feel all alone. Even inside of prison, I fought for justice, you know. I fought for what was right. I found my attitude hasn't changed about that since I was released. And I promise myself and I promise the guys, you know, that I'm gonna do all I can to improve a prison life. Because it's just like a hospital. When you send your loved ones to the hospital because they're sick, you're expecting them to come back better. Prison is the same way. You're sending them to a place that you expect them to be rehabilitated. But yet they're coming back. Some of them more criminal-minded than they was when they went there.
Lorenzo had spent his time at more than 10 upstate prisons. A New York Times report last year unearthed decades of racial bias ingrained in many of the jails Lorenzo was housed at, including Attica and Clinton Correctional Facility. In that investigation, black prisoners going before parole boards were found to be at a significant disadvantage. Over the course of his final 10 years in prison, Lorenzo had 5 requests for parole rejected. Was racism something that you experienced during your time in prison?
I experienced a lot of it, a whole lot of it, especially when it comes down to misbehavior reports. Most of the correction officers, they are white. And if you're black, they will write you up a misbehavior report in a minute because they know it's going to affect how long you're going to stay inside that prison.
When you heard that you weren't going to be released, what went through your head?
I'm going to tell you, it can be a psychological torture because you do all you can to make the parole board, and that includes staying misbehavior report free. I was sentenced to 20 years to life, but instead I did 30. Even though I was what you would call rehabilitated, a model prisoner, they kept me.
What went through your mind when you found out that you were going to finally be able to leave prison?
I literally cried. I was so happy, you know. I literally had water coming out of my eyes, you know. I had water coming out of my eyes, and I was saying, oh man, I finally got my chance. I finally got my chance.
A rather unfamiliar skyline and a remarkably different city faced Lorenzo when he returned to New York. His first priority, a roof over his head.
I had heard horror stories about the men's shelters in New York City, so I was doing everything to try to avoid going to a shelter, but I failed in that area. So when I was released and told to go to Bellevue Men's Shelter. It wasn't until like 3 o'clock in the morning when they finally gave me a bed. You have to have a plan when you release from prison or you're gonna fail.
Lorenzo's plan was to use the counselling training he had gained during his time in prison to find a job. He connected with the Fortune Society. That's an organisation here in New York which helps ex-offenders find their feet.
In prison, right, the only place you got to sit at is your bed.
So you get used to that?
Yeah, I've gotten used to that.
They provided Lorenzo with housing and helped with the job search. He would soon find a job as a program officer at the Fort Washington Men's Shelter, which helps those with mental health illnesses and substance abuse disorders.
I have like 4 or 5 instances where I literally saved some guys' lives. It takes a lot. It takes a lot. I mean, you really have to control yourself. You really have to control yourself because you're being verbally abused, you're being threatened a lot too.
During our day with Lorenzo, we visited his favourite sites in New York, and it was in Times Square that we crossed paths with William Lawrence, who was homeless and out of luck.
I can't get a job until I get situated.
This is one thing you got to do. You got to realize, you got to utilize all your sources, all your resources. You don't count on just one. You never count on just one. You use all your resources. You go to the Salvation Army, you go to the homeless shelters. You know, it might be a last resort, you know, but I'm telling you, these shelters are not as bad as a lot of people make them out to be. And it's just like jail too. It's what you make it. Well, best of luck to you, William. Really, really.
By all accounts, you're an incredibly hard worker. It seems as if you dedicate a huge amount of time to progressing your career. But outside of work, what sort of things have you enjoyed doing the most?
The most that I've enjoyed is bonding with my family. Trying to do everything to make them proud of me because I know I brought shame upon the family. You know, I'm trying to make up for my absence.
When it came to building new relationships, when it came to dating, what made it particularly difficult?
I'm a sociable person. I see people on the street, you know, I smile, you know, and I'll say hello, you know, I don't have to know you, that's just me. And when I came home and people wasn't interacting like that no more, I felt out of place. I really felt out of place. I'm a guy, you know, that's a girl, I'm attracted to a girl, and I see a girl I'm attracted to in the street, but if I said good morning, look at me like I'm crazy, you know. I was talking to a friend of mine about this one day, you know. He says, listen, people, they don't do that no more. They did it 30 years ago, but no, they don't do that no more. So if you want to meet somebody, you have to go on the internet and join one of the dating sites.
You left New York in the 1980s, you returned to it in 2015. What was the biggest difference? What stood out to you the most in terms of how the city had changed, how society had changed over the course of that time?
It was amazing to see like everybody with a cell phone, and it seemed like everybody had a cell phone in their hand. And then I'm walking and I'm hearing people talking too, you know, I'm looking back and I'm looking at, who is he talking to? What? And I heard him say something. I said, "What? You're talking to me?" Then they, you know, point towards their earphone in their ear. You know, oh, wow, they're talking on the cell phone. And it was just amazing. You know, that was really took me for a loop. Yeah, this is a good view. I love checking out the free things you can do in New York City. Like one of the best times that I had this summer was in Battery Park and riding on the Staten Island Ferry. And I mean, it was one of the most enjoyable days I had. And another time, me and a friend, we went on what's called the Highliner. And I had heard about the Highliner, you know, when they was establishing it, but I had never been there. And when I did finally go there, oh man, it was amazing. Wow, this is crazy. Let me see, because I don't remember seeing this before. We had a nice long walk through this elevated park, and it was just amazing, you know, the sights and the sounds and the smells up there. It was really nice. It also gave me an appreciation for the freedom that I have. That's the biggest thing.